Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. I hope you're having a wonderful day today and a wonderful start to the month of March. Today, I thought I would just go ahead and jump on here and talk to you guys about the 13 books that I managed to finish in the month of February. Now, my reading life and my filming schedule are a little bit crazy at the moment. Just having a hard time focusing on much of anything. It's been a weird year. I've said that many times. Continuing to be so, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to put any pressure or stress on myself, but all that to say, I'm going to try to keep the editing to a minimum on this video, so expect for me to just do some rambling. We're going to go with it, and that's the plan. Before we jump into the 13 books, though, let me know in the comments what your favorite book was that you read in the month of February. Now, let's go ahead and get these out of the way. I've got my handy-dandy reading journal here, and I'm going to flip to my February books. It was a pretty good but strange reading month as far as pacing goes. I finished 2 books in the first 20 days of the month, and then the final week or so, it was just so many books happened. I was sick for a good portion of February, and it was just a weird time. So that's that, but let's go and talk about the books. So first, we're going to go ahead and get out of the way the 3 books that I read by Dennis Lehane. Those being, first, Gone Baby Gone, which is book 4 of the Kenzie and Gennaro series, and then book 5, which is called Prayer for Rain, I believe, which I don't have a physical copy of, and then the final book in the series, book 6, Moonlight Mile. So these are books 4, 5, and 6, the final 3 books in the Kenzie and Gennaro detective series, and I greatly enjoyed this detective series. It is gritty. It is following characters that are not the best of people, but they have the best intentions, in that they're like vigilantes in some ways. They're private investigators, and they're willing to take the law into their own hands if they feel like what they're doing is right. Their own morality, though, and what they view as right is not always the case, and it sometimes is hypocritical. It sometimes is detrimental to their own well-being or the well-being of others that they care about. But it's really fascinating to follow these characters who have no qualms about doing things that are questionable in pursuit of good. I really enjoyed particularly Gone Baby Gone, which makes sense. This is the one that is widely praised, and is the one that got turned into a film, and I believe that film was well received as well. But Gone Baby Gone is definitely the best of the series overall. I enjoyed books 5 and 6 as well, but this was easily the peak moment for me. It had a very compelling mystery, but additionally, it was the most thematically complex, and it had me questioning what I wanted to happen and whether or not I thought what the main characters did were the right decisions or were the decisions that I would have made. And it was one that left me thinking about it for quite some time after, to the point that I did put down the series for 2 weeks, which is not a long time, but considering I read books 2, 3, and 4 basically back to back, the fact that I managed to put it down for 2 weeks and then read books 5 and 6 is pretty impressive. But overall, I definitely recommend the Kenzie and Gennaro series by Dennis Lehane. I recommend anything Dennis Lehane writes. He is one of my all-time favorite authors. But this is a great, easy-to-read detective series if you're looking for one with characters that are very memorable and fully fleshed out and are not just like a good cop or like a grumpy cop or whatever. They're people, but they're put in these crazy situations and forced to make hard decisions, and I really enjoyed that. So definitely recommend the Kenzie and Gennaro series. Next, we're going to talk about a book that I don't really recommend. I did not like From a Buick 8, and I don't really want to talk about it. It was just incredibly forgettable. There was nothing particularly bad about it. It's just, it did nothing interesting for me. And so overall, I have no interest in talking about it again or reading it again or any of that nonsense. So moving on, let's go ahead and talk about my one nonfiction read of the month. That is Love Stories by Trent Dalton. So I picked this up because it was Valentine's Day and I wanted some stories to lift my spirits and to be wonderful. What's interesting about this is I am not a very sappy person, and this is a very sappy book. So that didn't really resonate with me. It's a book that I think when people read it, it will give them hope for humanity from the stories. But for me personally, none of the stories resonated with me as much as Trent Dalton in general does, because he's such a hopeful and optimistic and encouraging person who just sees the good in so many things. And he's just a human being that I'm very grateful is on this earth. So while I didn't necessarily enjoy a lot of the stories here, getting to see more about Trent Dalton, the person, was really nice, and it continues to build my respect and admiration for this author. I think he's just a wonderful person, so we'll read everything he writes. So that was my one nonfiction of the month. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the book that I was recommended by a subscriber. That book is Sula by Toni Morrison. This is an incredibly powerful and thought-provoking and emotional novel. It's very brief, and that was a little bit of an issue for me. I kind of wish that it had been longer, but at the same time, it was hard to read at times as well. So I was also kind of grateful for how short it was. But essentially, Sula follows two women from the time of their childhood to the time of their adulthood, and really the culmination of their lives and their friendship. They are two women who are drawn together magnetically almost, but they are very, very different. They come from two very different paths, with different backgrounds, different families, and kind of stand on opposite sides of the spectrum as far as like the polarity within society and within culture and how people are viewed. One comes from like a really nice family who have manners and things like that, and one comes from one that's more rough around the edges. And it's really about that polarity as well as this female friendship, and how it can be impacted by race, by class, by upbringing, by traumatic events, by so many different things. It's a book that I want to sit with for some time, and I'd like to read again. Ultimately, I do think that The Bluest Eye is still my favorite Toni Morrison book, but this one was incredible, very thought-provoking, and one that just demands to be picked apart and analyzed. So overall, I really enjoyed this, and I recommend it. Thank you so much to the person who recommended it to me. The rest of the books that we're going to talk about are all 2025 releases. Some are already out, some are not quite out yet, so my thoughts will vary on some of those because I will have reviews out for a few of them very, very soon. First, let's go ahead and talk about Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yambao. This is an interesting one. It is my family book club's book of quarter one that we're all reading together. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be in the minority in that I thought it was fine, but I didn't love it. This is essentially the story of a young woman who takes over her family business from her father, and that business is running a pawn shop where people can pawn off their regrets and kind of the memories associated with that. Essentially, her father was running it, and the day after he retires, he is missing. And so she sets out on a quest with this mysterious stranger to find her father. And it's about memory, it's about regret, it's about the paths that our lives take. It's about people from two very different worlds coming together and whether or not they can kind of distance themselves from their worlds to be together. It's a story that I think had a very good idea, but I wasn't crazy about the execution. I did not really connect with the characters in a book that I really felt needed to be connected to the characters very strongly, and overall I thought the plot was kind of meandering. Again, a wonderful idea and a very fascinating world that there is a bit of good development for, but overall I just wanted a little bit more connection to the story itself. So not bad by any means, but overall I thought it was just okay. That's my opinion though. Next, we're gonna go ahead and talk about The Fourth Consort. This is by Edward Ashton, and I already have a review for this, so I will leave it linked down below. This is a very interesting science fiction story, though. It is about a man named Dalton who gets stranded on this planet after he's sent to kind of negotiate peaceful terms with this alien race, and he kind of has to fend for himself here, as well as his co-pilot person, Mira, and they also have other alien races that are competing to kind of build this treaty, and he gets forced into a very delicate situation, and I found it to be amusing and intriguing, and a very small story in a very large world, but I appreciated the scale of it, and overall I thought it was a really great time, so I definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a short science fiction story that has some compelling creativity in it, while not necessarily tackling some huge ideas or the larger world as a whole. You get enough of the world to enjoy and kind of get rooted in the story, but that's about it. So that is that. I did enjoy The Fourth Consort, and I do recommend it. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about Wild Dark Shore. This is by Charlotte McConaughey, and it does come out this week. So definitely check this one out. I loved this story a lot. It's a literary mystery story in which we follow a family of a man and his 3 children living on this very remote island between Australia and Antarctica. And the reason they're there is to preserve these different species of seeds and things that exist on this island and try to get as many of them off as they can before the island is basically submerged in water because of the rising tides and water levels. But this mysterious woman washes up on their shore and things go from there. There are a lot of secrets in this book. There are a lot of reveals in the story, but ultimately the thing that really compelled me about it was not all of that as much as it was the character work. I thought that that was incredible. And I also really enjoyed just the deep look into nature and the world around us and how small we are in it, but the impact that we leave upon it. It was a really gorgeous read, a very traumatic read, but also a very cathartic one. So Wild Dark Shore was very, very good, and I definitely recommend this book. It was excellent. I cannot wait to read more from this author. Next, we'll go ahead and talk about a book that I wasn't crazy about. That was Johnny Careless. This is by Kevin Wade, and it is a release that came out, I want to say in January, but ultimately it's one that I really don't feel very much connection to whatsoever. So this is a detective story set in modern day, and it's kind of set up to be this kind of grisly detective, kind of akin to detective pulp stories of old, but set in this modern world, 2025. They talk about all the different technology things and yada, yada, yada. And the victim of this is Johnny Careless, and the detective has this long history with Johnny, and it kind of delves into that, going back and forth in time, etc., etc. What didn't work for me with this is that I feel like with these pulpy detective stories in general, it boils down to two things. It has to have a compelling mystery, and it has to have a very engaging protagonist that is very memorable. And I don't think that this book really exceeded my expectations on either of those fronts. The mystery I didn't really care about, and more importantly, the protagonist was not interesting. And in these kinds of books, you have to have a really compelling protagonist. But he wasn't whatsoever. There were a couple moments that I liked overall in the story, but I just found this to be really forgettable. So not really my highest recommendation by any means. If it's a series, which I could definitely see it being, I won't be continuing. I just don't have any interest. Now let's go ahead and talk about a couple others though. So these next three all come out in the future, so I'll have reviews up for them at some point. The first of those is Ultramarine. This is by Mariette Navarro, and it is translated from the French by Yves Hill Agnes. This is a really fascinating story. So this is a literary suspense story, but it's really not. It's more like psychology suspense rather than like physical, like danger, oh my gosh, what's going to happen kind of thing. It's really a story of just building psychological tension and kind of questioning reality. So essentially we follow a female captain, and she has this crew of men that she's in charge of. They're in the middle of the ocean, and she's kind of just trying to prove herself in the situation. Her father was a captain, so she kind of has that legacy to live up to, but additionally she kind of feels like she doesn't quite have her place here on the ship, even though she feels so at home in the ocean. Kind of as a way to earn credibility with her crew, she decides to let them stop the ship and get off and just take a swim in the ocean. And from there, 20 of them get into the ocean and 21 of them come out. And it's about that, where did this person come from? Who are they? What is going on? And additionally, just some weird things are happening on the ship, and it feels like they're in this very tight claustrophobic area without a lot of control in this wide ocean where things could go wrong, and they're just stuck in it. Ultimately, I think that this story was not as impactful as it could have been, but at the same time, there were some things I really enjoyed about it. I think that the writing is very eerie. I think that it is very smooth in a weird way. I kind of just, as I was reading it, I let the language wash over me, not necessarily taking too long on any specific passage, but just reading it, going through it. The first 20 to 30% of the book is really just description of the men's time in the water and her time isolated on the boat while they're there, because she stays on the boat. And it's a very long passage, but it's a very transfixing one at the same time. And from there, I had questions about where this was going, what was going on with this character. But overall, the plot is not there. It's not a plot-based story. It's all about the meaning behind the events that are taking place here, and a very, very small story, but overall one that did have great tension that built throughout. I wasn't crazy about the payoff of it. But overall, I think it's a beautifully translated and beautifully written book, even if the plot itself is not necessarily compelling. So if you're looking for a psychologically suspenseful story about building tension and a woman trying to find her place in a world where she suffered loss and needs to find herself. I think it's a really good book. Yeah, out from Deep Vellum on March 4th. Check that out. Next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about a book that will be out in March as well. And I ate this book up, you guys. I can't remember the last time that I read a book physically this quickly, because I don't have a lot of time to read physically. I've got kids and jobs and all that jazz. But the book is The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Fracassi. And this book was so compelling. So compelling. I couldn't get enough of it. So essentially in this story, we follow a woman who is a scientist, and she has, with her husband who has passed away, created a time machine, but it's not really what you expect. The 3 rules of time travel are: Rule 1, you can only travel to a point within your lifetime. Rule 2, you can only travel for 90 seconds. And Rule 3, you can only observe. So basically, they get into this machine and they're able to send their consciousness back to their bodies at a different point in time that they've already lived in and observe, which may not sound super interesting, but it is. And ultimately, the story is about how there is some stuff that's starting to go wrong, and there's some mysteries that are going on, as well as this corporation that is funding these experiments, and how the owner of that corporation is really becoming overbearing and trying to get the main character out of their control. But what I really love about this book, besides the building tension and the questions and all that jazz, was that this book had some of the most creative and impactful uses of dramatic irony that I have ever read. There were moments where things would happen on the page and I'd be like, oh my gosh, but the characters would not notice, and my heart would start racing. I gasped in this book. I felt emotional in this book. I felt wrung out by this book at times, and I was compelled every single page. I loved this so much. You guys are going to want to read it. I want to say it comes out March 14th. That isn't right. It's coming up. It's going to be out very, very soon. It's out from Orbit, so thank you so much to Orbit for sending me a copy of this book. I'll put the actual release date here. You guys should absolutely check it out. I adored it. It was very, very good. Next, and the final book I'm going to talk to you guys about today is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I finally read it. It's When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. So this book doesn't come out until April even. It comes out April 2025. That's all it says. So yeah, comes out in a couple weeks now, I guess. April's next month. What is going on? But anyway, this is one of my most anticipated books of the year. Nat Cassidy is one of my all-time favorite authors. I have a whole video talking about his other 3 works that I've read. I'll leave that link down below. But When the Wolf Comes Home, I was very excited. And I'm happy to say that I loved this book so much. It met my expectations and exceeded them. And I don't really want to tell you too much about this book, because I really went in blind, and I think that that was such a good experience. What I will tell you is that we follow a woman named Jess, and at the start of the book, she kind of gets put in this very difficult situation of having to go on the run with like an 8-year-old kid. I'm not going to explain to you how all that takes place, but they're on the run, and there is this wolf, like werewolf type beast chasing after them. There's so much more going on to this story, but I don't want to tell you. I want you to enter into this book as blind as possible. Just take that and read it upon my recommendation, please. If you like horror that is gruesome, but is also very, very creative, and just kind of tests the boundaries of what you can do in a horror book, I think that this is a really good one to read. Additionally, it is ruthless. I remember I finished this book and I just kind of sat there staring at the ceiling for like 2 minutes, just absolutely floored by what I read. Nat Cassidy gives you some warnings in this book in like the introduction and things, and I didn't take him seriously, but I should have. When the Wolf Comes Home, out in April. Please go pre-order it or get ready to read it however you want to when it comes out. Audiobook, ebook, physical book, doesn't matter. Just read this book if you love horror. It was incredible. Alrighty folks, so those are the 13 books that I read in February of 2025. Like I said, kind of a weird reading month. It was slow and then it was very, very fast, but I really enjoyed a lot of what I read. So overall, I think my average rating for the month was like a 3.8 or something, which, 3.85, which, believe it or not, is actually lower than January, which I had a 4.1. So overall, while I'm not reading as many books as I normally do, I'm reading a lot of good ones. So yeah, here is a little breakdown of my month. You can see it there. I'm enjoying my reading journal a lot. So thank you so much for watching. let me know if any of these sound interesting to you. I particularly recommend Sula, When the Wolf Comes Home, The Third Rule of Time Travel, and the Kenzie and Gennaro series. I feel like those. Oh, and Wild Dark Shore. All great books. Highly recommend. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.